Welcome to the Verdin Sports Show. I'm your host, Jacob Verdin. Hopefully, everyone's having a good Wednesday. Today, we're going to be breaking down what Brian Kelly told us on the teleconference. Had some player interviews yesterday. We got some good info from Will Campbell. We'll be reacting to the college football playoff rankings for Week 13 that dropped yesterday. And we'll be doing a little bit of a Heisman evaluation. Who's too high on the odds list? Who's too low? Is there an unfair balance? You got a new favorite, so without further ado, let's jump right into this. If you got any questions, concerns, comments, anything throughout the stream, drop it in the comment section. We'll get to it. And so kickoff time got announced. Oklahoma's kickoff will be at 6 o'clock, obviously, this Saturday versus Vandy. You're going to have a 6:45 kickoff. Two night games. I don't know. I feel like it bodes in your favor. You can't complain when it's a night game. If people are worried about LSU winning, if people are worried about this being a close game and LSU being in a tough spot, because recently you've seen about 3 to 4 rough stretch of bad performances, this is about the best news you could have heard. This helps this matchup. This helps you kind of be a little more comfortable, be a little more in your own routine. It plays into your favor. Obviously, we didn't think that we would be worrying about a Vanderbilt, but as the year has progressed and as the Commodores have progressed themselves, it's become more of a realistic opportunity for them to come out of Tiger Stadium with a victory. Now, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and we're not going to give our prediction too early. We'll be doing that Friday at 3:30, so hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that stream. There's been some interesting narratives around the building, though. Obviously, the players-only meeting, that's one of the first things that has been talked about pretty heavily around LSU, right? Does it hold much weight? Is it overhyped? What exactly is, the players-only meeting that's happening? What are they talking about, and what is that going to have an impact on LSU going forward? My first takeaway is obviously, you only hear this whenever something is not going the way you like. You don't hear it whenever you're undefeated, whenever you're going to a national championship, things of that nature. So it's one of those things, I guess I could say, for lack of a better phrase, you could expect. I mean, when you're on a 3-game skid, when you lose everything, looks like you're losing hope and you're trying to turn it around, I'd imagine this would be one of the moves that would be made, especially in a team locker room environment that's probably trying to be accountable, probably trying to have some leaders emerge. And look, I guess the optimistic view you could have on this is going forward, this coaching staff and the people in the building are going to know who they can count on and who will be your motivators, the people that are going to push their teammates alongside while also pushing themselves. That's the takeaway. Now, it's one of the best ways you could really spin this, quite frankly, because in every way it's really bad. It's really showing the kind of the spot that LSU's at that you really didn't think they'd be in. I didn't expect LSU to have players-only meetings with 4 losses, and we still got 2 games left to play. I mean, we thought we'd have at most a 2-loss season, but obviously some things have gotten away from you. Obviously some injuries have kind of made their way into the lineups and kind of prevented you from being able to be consistent and being able to execute things the way you wish you could have. Garrett Dellinger being one of the biggest injuries, and Coach Kelly gave us an update today, said he's practicing a little bit, and obviously they're going to have to see some more. But you got the optimistic vibe from him. He's talking about just the fact that they think he could be trending in the right direction. Now, I don't know if he's going to play Saturday, but, there's a good possibility for what it's worth. Now, here's something that I find interesting, and I mean, look, you could really see it 2 ways. Coach Kelly's talking about the players having to motivate themselves, and it's just not their job to motivate them. They should already come to the game motivated and practice motivated, and I get that. Now, to a certain extent, I agree, because, you don't want players who just can't flip that switch. You don't want to always have that pep speech. However, I do think, when you look back to some of the big coaches, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, Kirby Smart even, you've always heard those big hoorah speeches that I think do come at the right times. I mean, there's always kind of a time where it's necessary, and it could just be the way you get motivated. It could be the way that you take criticism, stuff of that nature. But the comment about them motivating themselves, I mean, every now and then a little extra oomph, a little extra kick in the rear end could be the little boost you need. And I think Coach Kelly doesn't shy away from it. I mean, we saw Chris Hilton get an earful, and obviously, there's some other instances where communication breakdowns or, communication flare-ups happen on the sideline. But I think if he channeled that energy pre-game, and I'm not saying he does or doesn't, I mean, we're not there. I'm just saying the motivate yourself thing, the energy's there for Coach Kelly. He's bringing it. I've seen him bring it multiple times, whether it be Damian Ramos, Garrett Nussmeier, the instances last week with Chris Hilton. There's been times where he's shown the heart, the fight, the energy that, quite frankly, LSU seems like at times it's lacking. So I'm just a little confused on the whole motivate themselves thing, because at times it does look like they're not motivated, they're not ready, they're not starting fast. And if that's a common trend and a common theme, maybe it's time to try to motivate them a little bit. But like I said, we're not there. We don't really know 100% of what's going on behind closed doors. We're really just able to gather what we hear. We got Big Easy Ball in the comment section asking, do you think Perk comes back? So we'll move into this segment real quick because I got a good bit of notes for this, right? Now, I think him returning to LSU, it's all going to depend on, obviously, LSU's overall situation, what they do in the offseason, how they grow, are they able to look like a contender? Because if they're not going to be competing for anything, I just don't see a world where it's worth Harold Perkins returning to LSU. Now, would we like to see it? Of course. I think it could push his stock up. I think he is a top 10, potential player. I think he has the ability to come back and really help LSU's defense transcend to that level you need it to transcend to. A lot of people are going to worry, how are they going to use him? Are they going to be able to develop Harold Perkins? I don't think you worry about that. I think Harold Perkins, especially with, the last couple of games he had actually played for us, if you keep him in that star spot, put him, a little bit closer to the line, at times have him in a hybrid role where he could play the coverage if necessary, but more often than not, send him inside, try to create some havoc. I think it could work. I mean, obviously, Whit Weeks has been able to make a big impact in it, and if you had someone like Harold Perkins to pair with a Whit Weeks next season, you could see a completely different defense. So there's value in it, and I think, obviously, Harold Perkins sees the value in it, but all in all, we're talking about a draft stock that's having a mid to late first round. I mean, it's still high enough for it to be a consideration with the injury, and we got to kind of talk about the recovery. We got to talk about just the overall fact that he's going to have to go through an offseason of grueling, recovery period, therapy. I couldn't think of the word, physical therapy. He's going to be in a situation where he's pushing his body to the test, right? So, I mean, during that moment, you do get a gut check. You do get is it worth it? And I think, having that NFL spot on the roster, the check potentially with the draft, the first round grade, I feel like if it's there, it's not an unrealistic possibility for him to take it. I think it's all going to boil down to, like I said, how does LSU present that developmental plan? LSU's in a situation where they have been able to get players to retain and develop their draft stock. I mean, we've seen it with, in more recent examples, obviously, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. You could even throw out guys like Kayshon Boutte, but, I mean, he kind of fumbled and went from first round to, third to fourth. LSU's had an opportunity to convince people to stay, though. I mean, after that season, Kayshon, inevitably did his thing where he said, I'm coming back, and then he flipped his decision around for whatever the case may be. My point being, though, LSU for the last couple of seasons has been in a situation where they tried to keep their best player. I don't think that they, will be changing up that protocol this offseason. I think it's a pretty good shot. Harold Perkins is going to get he's going to get pursued pretty hard by LSU, right? I mean, he's a valuable player. I think they also have to, kind of keep into consideration they're going to be potentially asking the Garrett Nussmeier to return as well. And I know that might be, a confusing statement by some people, but I just think it's the same thing as a Jaden Daniels. Jaden wasn't lights out perfection in year one. Jaden experienced the same scrutiny, the same growing pains, and the same struggles. And, for Jaden, the offensive line was kind of, struggling for the first 6 weeks, and inevitably they got into their groove. For Nuss, it's been a little bit of the opposite. The offensive line was good in the beginning, not getting him sacked. He was clean, then injuries crept in, and then now it's kind of falling apart. It's just the nature of having people go out and putting freshmen in, putting inexperienced people in. And like Will Campbell was saying, let's kind of switch to this. He talked about just a young inside offensive lineman playing their first snaps in huge games on the road in the swamp versus Florida versus SEC tough, competitors. It's not a walk in the park, right? I think he's another interesting draft stock to watch. Obviously, he's going to be going. I think he's a top 10 pick, but, his stock has kind of dropped at times to the 8th to 9th range. So, there's a lot of interesting decisions, right? There's a lot of interesting prospects that LSU has. I think Harold Perkins is probably one of their better ones. I think, naturally, Will Campbell's probably going to go first. Then it's a toss-up between Emory Jones or Harold Perkins. At that point, quite frankly, Perk could be the second player taken off the board in LSU's draft class. So with that being said, I think it's an opportunity for him to secure something that, quite frankly, a lot of people are not going to be able to secure. I mean, going to the NFL is not guaranteed, especially when you enter college ball. Small percentage of people are able to do it. I think if the chances are there, I wouldn't call you crazy for grabbing it. But then again, maybe he's going to want to finish out his career at LSU strong. Maybe he thinks LSU's in a situation where they're going to keep growing and keep elevating and potentially compete for a college football playoff spot, a national championship, SEC championship. I think it's just the offseason. He's going to have some time to reflect. Obviously, it's going to probably have a lot to do with where he's at in his recovery, too. I mean, if he's not able to test, if he's not able to do stuff at the combine, pro day, things of that nature, it might be tough for him to continue to raise that stock or prove that he's that first-round talent, and maybe he's in a situation there. So there's a lot of variables here. If I had to guess, if I had to lean, I wouldn't think it'd be the craziest thing in the world if he went, especially with him still being a first-round grade. But, like I said, the recovery, I think, is going to be one of the more important aspects to focus on here. Now, obviously, we wish him well. I mean, you want him to be able to recover and hit his potential and, accomplish that dream. I think it'll be something, it's a little bit of a tougher decision and more 50-50 than I think we were probably anticipating. Real quick, let's move. Before we move into the college football playoff ranking, actually, shout out Happy Dad. No artificial flavors, gluten-free, low in sugar. You know the drill. Best taste of hard seltzer on the market, and you know where to get it. Albertsons, Rouse's, Walmart. You're getting your groceries. You're in your store, wherever you get it. Go to the liquor aisle, grab your case. Use code Verdin15 at checkout. They got Happy Dad merch. We're wearing a hoodie right now. It's getting chilly. Having some rain drop down. Got a nice little protection from the elements. Got 15% off for you with a link in the description of this very video. You click that link, go to their website, shop the merch, suit up. You got the purple and gold shirts. You got the hoodies. You got the Death Row records. You got the mini football helmets. You got the cases. Get it all. We're here. 15% off. Verdin15. Once again, link in the description. Thank you, Happy Dad. Let's move into these college football playoff rankings. Let me throw this graphic up there for the viewers. This is how we're looking through Week 13. Shout out Bleacher Report for the graphic, of course. Here we go. Let's read 1 through 12. Your bye weeks. Now, this does not mean Boise State's the 4th seed, right? This does not mean they're the 4th team in the country. I think what's happening here is they're the 4th highest ranked conference champion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how they're going to slide into this bye week spot. Let's talk about some of the implications around here, right? You got Texas winning the SEC here, according to this model. And it's just because they're the highest ranked. They're not really going into any in-depth predictions and giving the Longhorns the premature SEC conference championship in their rookie year. I'm sure all the Longhorn fans are going to be excited if that could potentially happen. And shout out to them because it's been a pretty good debut season. It's a polished program, obviously. Oregon, Big Ten, in a similar spot. First year, kind of running and gunning. Taking over. They're the number 1 team in the country, undefeated. Dylan Gabriel's looking very good. They're obviously going to have a test, though. They do have to play Ohio State again, and it's going to look like it'll be a conference championship matchup. I'm not saying I'm excited to see it, but it'll have some major implications, so I'm definitely going to have to flip it on. Boise State, like we said, Ashton Jeanty absolutely carrying the Broncos. Shout out to them. It's crazy to even see Boise State in a playoff contention, right? And we kind of talked pre-show with some people here saying if Tulane went undefeated somehow, some way, even a one-loss Tulane, if they grabbed one over Oklahoma or Kansas State, would they be in over Boise State? It's a question worth noting. Here's who could drop out of these rankings, right? I think Colorado could slide in, obviously, if they win the Big 12. Here's the question, though. Does BYU drop out? That would be their second loss. It would come in the conference championship. You're seeing 2 conference champion runner-ups. Honestly, you're seeing 2 runner-ups and 2 outside teams who didn't even make their conference championship appearing in this bracket as of the SEC and the Big Ten. You're seeing Indiana. You're seeing Ole Miss. You're seeing teams like Georgia. Now the question begs, how many runner-ups, how many seeds, how are you going to, fit in these outside teams if a Colorado, a team that's kind of, at the 14 spot or right on the outside, on the fringe, on the first couple of teams out, if they punch their way in and become one of these first 4, I think it could be interesting, right? I think it could be one of those spots that we should be paying attention to. I also would worry about Ole Miss. I'd worry about their game versus Florida. And I'm not saying they can't handle Florida. I'm just saying, obviously, Florida got a little more fight in them than we had given them credit for last week. It's not out the realm of possibility that game could potentially bump them out. Maybe even a close game against Florida could potentially bump them out. Another game I would worry about, Alabama versus Auburn. The Iron Bowl always provides antics. It always provides something a little worth watching. I wouldn't rule the Tigers out. Hugh Freeze has had a hell of a run, right? Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, about everything that can go wrong is going wrong, and Auburn is in a bit of a rough spot, to say the least. That's all I'm going to say. But never know. It's a couple of interesting games left on the schedule. It's not something saying that it's over with, ring the alarm bells. The playoffs are probably going to, look like this. These teams, maybe they change spots and swap around places in the bracket, but these top 12, it's probably going to be the squad that you see rolling in. However, chaos is possible. It's possible, and I'm not saying I'm rooting for it, but it would make some things a little more interesting. Let's talk about this Heisman real quick. We got another graphic for you. These are the Heisman odds. The next round on Instagram made this graphic, so shout out to them. Interesting, right? I mean, let's go with our instant takeaways. Travis Hunter running away with it. This says minus 330. We did live odd checks right before the stream. Travis is at minus 350 on DraftKings. Ashton Jeanty at plus 380. Look, Jeanty's getting Boise State to a bye, and he's only plus 380. I'm sorry. Value. Because if Boise State gets in and Travis Hunter and the Colorado Buffs lose the Big 12 and do not get in the college football playoff, I'm going to be sitting here screaming from the rooftops, screaming from the soapbox. Anything I can climb on and step on and it'll hold my weight, I will scream at the top of my lungs that Ashton Jeanty got robbed of the Heisman. We were, kind of confused on Boise State and their trajectory preseason and if they were going to be able to be a legitimate threat and somehow give, Ashton Jeanty something to run on, a platform to campaign on. I think them getting into the college football playoff is the platform that is, quite frankly, the biggest one you could have asked for. Winning your conference championship, playing a close game versus Oregon, consistently playing at that level all year with Ashton Jeanty, no injuries. I mean, this is perfect case scenario, obviously. I mean, it only can get better if they win one of their college football playoff games, but I think him being at plus 380 is almost a crime. I mean, yeah, I get it. Travis Hunter plays two positions. I can't express enough how impressive Ashton Jeanty is, what he's doing, and the fact that he's getting this team into the college football playoff. Potentially. Cam Ward dropping. He's at plus 1,400 right here. DraftKings had him at plus 1,300. How about that? Because at the beginning of the year, it looked like he was running away with this award. It looked like he was going to be a Jane Daniels-esque player, and then all of a sudden, Miami runs into a little bit of a rough patch. They had their moments during the season. At times, they were able to come back and turn it around, and he was Superman, but the late game heroics weren't able to continue. Let's talk about Superman. How about if Jalen Milroe puts on that Superman cape, unmas Tim, and gets Alabama to an SEC championship, somehow gets them to win that championship, somehow gets them into the college football playoff and makes them a top team, he's got a shot. And this has him at plus 3,300. DraftKings has him at plus 2,800 right now. But here is all I'm going to say. That's probably the best long shot in this entire graphic. The fact that Jalen Milroe has one of the best puncher's chance at getting to a natty, I'll even throw Dylan Gabriel in the mix because they still have a path. Dylan Gabriel's undefeated, number one team, maybe going to be Big Ten champion. Plus 2,500 is a steep bill. Do they have the best team? Do they have an opportunity? Best team might be a stretch. Opportunity is there. I think Jalen Milroe, though, he's also one of those conversations you've got to have. I think here's my looks. Ashton Jeanty, I think he's probably going to wind up having a hard argument to prevent him from getting that award because the playoffs, very hard to attain for a Mountain West team. They're the only ranked team, I believe. They're the only team making noise. The fact that he's consistently been able to put up the 150, 230, 2 to 3 touchdown games. I mean, there's times he's going into halftime with 40 yards. You wake up, boom, he's at 200. I mean, there's times where you think the Ashton Jeanty hype train, gravy train, whatever you want to call the train, is over and derailed, and it's not. And he's pushing them forward, and he's carrying them, and he's just showing off as Superman does. I think, he needs a lot more credit because this season has been phenomenal, and I'm going to say it one more time. I think he will get robbed. I'm terrified of it. I've kind of, predicted it all year, and it ain't the craziest prediction. It's probably one of the best favorite predictions. A Mountain West team player, losing to a Power 4 athlete, especially an athlete like Travis Hunter. Now, look, I'm not discrediting anything, right? Playing cornerback and wide receiver at this level, at this point, obviously impressive. And Colorado does have a path to the playoff. And if they get in the playoff, you can use the same argument I'm using for Genty to Travis. So then it'll be okay. But if they lose and BYU is that team, just like these graphics show, I got a problem with it. That's all I got to say. Thanks to everybody for tuning into the stream. We will be live Friday at 3:30 to preview the Vandy game. And it'll be interesting. You don't want to miss it. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Would you have thought preseason that LSU and Vandy would be as close and potentially as competitive as it could be? We'll be breaking down the odds, the lines, the key players, keys to the game. Should have G Sports. Tune in with us. Stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up on the stream. Thank you all for tuning in. Y'all have a good one.